Hello friends! Today we are gonna design a school management dashboard using Next.js and Tailwind. For each user role, we'll display a different dashboard. If the user is an admin, they'll see this homepage. We have the user counts here, we can see the events by date, and here we have some animated charts. We can hover over and see the details. And all these components are fully responsive. You'll learn how to design React components for different screen sizes. On the menu, we have some list items, but all these items are visible together only if the user is an admin. If we log in as a student, we'll see only a few items. And on the homepage, there is the class schedule which shows all our lessons. We can also change the UI and display them daily. Also, we can log in as a parent, and it's gonna display the schedule of the children. We can see their exams, results, and the other student details. And finally, we can log in as a teacher. Let's see the teachers. We have a beautiful table here. Let's see one of them. Here is the user information, some details, the teacher's schedule, and a small animated chart here. Of course, we cannot update the users, but if we log in as an admin, we'll see this icon to update the user. And on the list page, we'll see this delete and create buttons. In the form components, we'll be using React Hook form, and you'll see how easy to validate form inputs. Here is the student list, the student page, and the other lists. It's a great project to understand the latest versions of React and Next.js and improve your design skills. And in the next tutorial, we'll create our backend and fetch all these data from a database. So let me know in the comments what technologies you want to see for the second part of this tutorial. I'll read your comments and start creating the next video. If you want to see more projects like this one, please like the video. If you are ready, let's get started. Okay, I created a new folder, and inside this folder, I'll install my Next.js application. To do that, you can open your terminal and write here npx create next app. But if you do that, you will have to delete some unnecessary codes, and you'll have to upload all the images that we are going to be using during this tutorial. And most importantly, if you watch this tutorial in the future, it will probably install a different Next.js version, so you may encounter some problems. To prevent this, I highly recommend you use my GitHub repository. The link will be in the description. And as you can see, we have the starter branch here. And at the end of the video, I'm going to add here the completed version. And in this branch, we have all the images. And we don't have any unnecessary folders, styles, or HTML. So we will create everything from scratch. And as always, this is an open source project. You can use it wherever you want. So I would appreciate if you could give this project a star. After doing that, you can fork this project. And it will create a new repository on your account. As you can see, this is my test account. So right now, you'll be able to push your changes to your own repository. Right now, you can come here and copy your URL, but I'm going to be using my own account. I will copy here, come back, and I will say git clone, paste your URL here, dot, and enter. As you can see, our folders are here. Let's install the dependencies, npm install, and our libraries are here. Right now, we can start our application. So I will say npm run dev. I will enter. So let's visit the localhost. I'll come here, paste my URL, and our application is ready. And let's see our example. And as you can see, it opens this admin dashboard. And here we have two main components, this menu and this content. And we are going to change the content according to user, but this menu and this navbar are common components. So even if we visit the student dashboard or teacher dashboard, we are going to keep seeing this menu and navbar. So instead of writing them for each page again and again, we can write them in our layout. So let's create our pages and change our layout. I'm going to open my source folder, and inside the app directory, I'm going to create a new folder, and it's going to be admin. And inside, I'll create my page. Let's create our function. By the way, if you don't know how I'm using this shortcut, you can visit my GitHub repository, snippets, and here you can find my React snippets. And as you can see, it creates a React component with Tailwind class name. After copying here, just search for snippets, and since we are using TSX file, I'm going to choose TypeScript JSX and paste them here. This is how you can use these shortcuts. Okay, let's say admin page. Let's create two more. Student folder and page. And finally, teacher. And one more, I forgot. It's going to be parent. Okay, let's check. I can close here. I'll say admin page. Okay, it works. So right now, let's change our layout. As you realize, we have the layout component here. And whatever I write here will be reflected to our pages. As you can see, teacher, admin, always here. So what can I do is add my menu and this navbar. So we will not have to write them for each page. And after, we can change our content according to our user type. But there is something important here. We are also going to have a login page. Let's create one more page here. Let's say sign in. And as you can see, this text is still here. That's because this is the root layout. But for the login page, we are not supposed to see any menu or navbar. We are just going to have here a component that we can enter our username and password. So what I'm going to do is create a new layout and put my dashboard pages inside that layout. So let's create a new folder. I'll say dashboard. So I'm going to add my pages here. Student and teacher. And right now I can add different layout here. Let's copy here and paste. And I'll say dashboard layout. We don't need body anymore. I'll say div. And let's say dashboard. And right now, as you can see, that comes from the root layout. But if I visit dashboard and admin, okay, it's not found because it's outside the app directory. It should be inside. Okay, dashboard is here. This is what we want. If you want to, you can get rid of this dashboard. I want to reach my pages by writing just their names, just like that, admin, student, or whatever. To do that, I will come here and write the name of the folder, just like that. So Next.js is gonna ignore that part, and we can reach our pages by writing their name. Okay, so let's delete this text and add our components. Firstly, I'm gonna separate my layout. We are gonna have this left and right part. I will come here, delete this. Let's close here and this menu. And let's give here a class name. The height will be full screen, and I will say Flexbox. So our items will be horizontal. Let's get rid of these children for now. And let's create our divs. I'll say left and right. Just like that. As you can see, they are horizontal. And in our example, the left side is much smaller than the right side. So I can give here any size. Just like that. So here is going to be 5 times bigger than the left side. Just like that. Let's give a color so we can see better. Actually, let's make 200. Okay. If you want to, instead of giving here a number, as you can see, it's the actual size. You can directly give your percentage like this. So it's gonna be a little bit smaller. It can stay like that. Let's open our console and take care of the responsive design. Actually, let's open here. As you can see, for the small screen, we can see only icons here. When I make this larger, it's getting bigger, but in the medium screen, here we have another component here, and in this case, the menu should be smaller. And after this medium screen, again, it's gonna be bigger. Actually, it's overflowing here. We can fix that. So let's come back and give different size for the MD screen. I'll say if it's MD, here is gonna be smaller. Here is gonna be bigger. And if it's large, again, it's gonna be exactly the same. Or if you want to, you can increase here to prevent that overflowing. And if it's X large, it's gonna be exactly the same. 14%. Okay. There's a mistake here. Okay, so let's see. This is the small screen. I'm gonna expand. It's smaller. And after the medium screen, again, it's gonna be bigger. And here is gonna be a little bit smaller again. This is our main layout. So let's add our items. After that, we can see better. I'm gonna add here my logo and this menu. And on the right side, we are going to have a navbar, and here is going to be the children. So let's close everything, open our menu, and inside the source folder, I'm going to create a new folder, and it's going to be components. Let's create our first component, menu.tsx, and navbar. And let's use them inside the dashboard. This is the root layout. We are going to be using dashboard layout. And inside the left side, firstly, I'm going to create my logo. To do that, I will use Next.js link. And when we click on this link, we are going to be redirected to homepage. And inside, let's add our image. It's going to be logo.png. Let's give a size 32 and 32. And I'm going to add my application name. I know it's not that creative, but it can stay like that. Let's give a class name, hidden. So for the small screen, we are not going to see our text here. It's going to be only this image. But if it's LG, it's going to be block. Hidden basically means display none. And if the screen is bigger, it's going to be display block. Let's separate our logo and this name. They are going to be horizontal. Let's center them. And gap between image and text will be 2. By the way, I forgot adding here slash, and perfect. Let's shrink this page. As you can see, only logo and text. And after adding this text, they don't have to be centered. So I will say, if it's LG, justify will be start. Just like that. Let's give a padding here. Okay. Right now I can add my menu. Again, for the small screen and medium screen, we are going to see only our icons. And for the LG screen, we are going to see our texts. Let's see our example. We have a bunch of menu items here, and also we are going to have menu titles. Let's add our menu here. I'm going to open. And here we are going to have our data. As you can see, title menu. And inside we have the items. Each menu item has an icon, label, and the URL. And the others. So let's use them here. I will say menu items.map. And for each item inside, we are going to have a div. And we should pass here the unique key. Let's say item.title. Let's add our title here. And after that, we are going to be using our lists. Again, we are going to be using a map. And for each list item, we are going to create a link. So I'll say items.map. For each item, create a link that comes from Next.js. Let me show you. And inside, we are going to have the icon and the text. Image that comes from next image. Source will be item.icon. Let's give a size. It's going to be 20 pixels. And here is going to be item.href. Of course, there is a warning here that because we don't have any unique key, let's add. And it's going to be, let's say, label. it's unique. And after this icon, finally, we can add our text, which is item.label. Let's see. Okay, let's give a style. Firstly, I'm going to give here a space and the text will be small. And after that, I'm going to separate my items, let's say flags, but it's going to be vertical and gap between each item. Let's give a style for this title. At the beginning, it's going to be hidden. And for the LG screen, it's going to be block. Let's give a color. Font will be light. And I'm going to give margin for the top and the bottom. Just like that. Actually, let's get rid of those backgrounds. We don't need them anymore. Okay, so let's make them horizontal and give a space between them. I'll say class name, flags, item center, justify center. But remember, after the LG screen, doesn't have to be centered, so I'll say start. Gap between icon and the text will be 4. Let me close this menu. Let's give a color. It's going to be 500. And again, PY, and it's going to be 2. And if it's the small screen, we are not going to see our texts. So it's going to be exactly the same. Just like that. Okay, let's give a background for this content, and after we are going to create our navbar. I'll open my dashboard and I'll say BG, and I'm going to give a specific color here. Let me copy and paste. And also I'm going to give here overflow scroll. Let me open our example. And here, as you can see, I can scroll. This is why we are using this. And inside the right side, I'm going to add my navbar. And here is going to be the children. For each dashboard page, we are going to see different content. Okay, let's open our navbar and let's see what we are going to have. As you can see, we have the search input here and these icons. Let me show you this page. And for the small and medium screen, we are not going to see this input, so it's going to be hidden at the beginning. Let's come back. Firstly, I'll say flags, item center, justify between. I'm going to separate my items and I'm going to give a padding here. And inside, let's say search bar. And icons and user. And this search bar will be hidden at the beginning. And if it's empty, it's going to be flags. Let's add our items. We are going to have the icon and this input. Search.png. I'm going to give my sizes. Let's import this, by the way. It comes from Next.js image. And here is going to be the input. I'm going to add a placeholder. Let's say search. There is a typo. And on the right side, we are going to have two icons, the username and the user avatar. Here is our first icon. Inside, I'm going to add my image. It's going to be message.png. And 20 pixels. And I'm gonna give here a background. It's gonna be white. Rounded will be full. Let's give a size. Just like that. I'm gonna center my icon inside. To do that, I can use flexbox. Item center, justify center. Okay, it's centered. Also, I can click here. So I will say cursor pointer. Let's create one more. And here is gonna be announcement. Let's make them horizontal. I'll say flex, item center, gap between each item will be 6. And after those icons, let's add our username. Again, it's gonna be flex, but this time flex column. Because we have 2 items here, the name and the title. Let's say John Doe and admin. I will give a class name here. Firstly, text will be x small. I'm gonna decrease the line height, leading 3, and the font will be medium. Okay, what about this? It's gonna be even smaller, so let's say 10 pixels. It's gonna be gray, and text will be right. So we are gonna see it on the right side. And finally, we are gonna add here our avatar. Let's say 36. And it's gonna be a circle. Rounded full. Okay, let me zoom out. Perfect. And I can add this item here. Its position will be absolute and it's gonna be on the top right. So let's come back. And inside this div, I'm gonna create a new div. Let's say 1. And here is gonna be position absolute. The top will be -3. Right will be the same. Let's give a size. And center this number. Align item center, justify content center. And the background color will be purple, 500. And the text color will be white. Okay, as you can see, it's here. That because if you are using the absolute positioning, the parent should be relative. Just like that. Okay, let's make this a circle. It's gonna be full, and the text will be x small. Okay, awesome. What about this search? I'm gonna delete this background and give here a border. So I will say item center, gap between the icon and input will be 2. Text will be x small. The rounded will be full. And I'm gonna give here a border. To do that, we can use a ring, 1.5 pixels. And I'm gonna change the color. And finally, I'm gonna give padding on the left and right side, just like that. What about this input? Let's give a padding, get rid of this background color, and I'm gonna give a specific width. I'll say class name is gonna be 200. I will give a padding, and background will be transparent. And when we click on this, we are not gonna see this outline. Just like that. For the small screen, as you can see, only the right items, but we should align them to the right side. To do that, I'm gonna come here and I will say justify and. Okay, they are still here because it's not full size. It contains all this div and aligns our items at the end of the div. Now for the medium, we are going to see our search bar. Okay, perfect. So we've finished our common components. Right now we can take care of the admin page. I'm going to close here. Let me zoom out. I will come back, close them, and open the admin page. And again, we are going to have two parts, the left side and the right side. And at the beginning, as you can see, the right component is right under the left component. So they are going to be vertical at the beginning. And for the large screen, empty screen, they are going to be horizontal. And as you realize, the right side is twice smaller than the left side. Firstly, I'm going to give here a padding. I will say flex, gap between items will be 4, and flex will be column. And if it's empty, flex will be row. And inside, let's say left and right. At the beginning, they are going to be full size. And for the LG screen, here is going to be 2 and here is going to be 1. Let's say left and right. Let's see. I'll open my application. Here is going to be the admin page. As you can see, left and right. If I make this smaller, they are going to be vertical. Let's see what's inside our left component. I can close here. As you can see, we are going to have 4 cards here. To do that, we can create a new component because for each user type, we are going to fetch different data. I will open my menu. Inside the components, I'll say user card. We are going to have here a type. In the next lesson, we are going to change here, but for now it can stay like that because we don't have any database yet. Let's come here and let's say user cards. We are going to have a list here and let's call our component 4 times. First type will be student, after teacher, parent, and staff. Okay, let's separate them. Flex, gap between items will be 4, justify will be between. Let's give a style. Of course, firstly, we are going to add our items. Firstly, I'm going to give a minimum width, and after I will give some padding. They are going to be rounded. And as you can see, the first and the third items are purple, but the second and the fourth items are yellow. So for the odd childs, we are going to give this purple. For the even childs, we are going to give the yellow color. Firstly, I'm going to give rounded to X large. For the odd numbers, background will be purple, but we have here a specific color. If you want to, you can use it just like that, but we are going to be using exactly the same colors on our other components. So instead of writing them again and again, we can extend our Tailwind theme. What I mean by that? I will scroll down. As you can see, we have Tailwind configuration here. And inside the theme object, we can extend our fields. I'm going to add some more colors. The first one will be Llama Sky. This color. This blue color. And also we are going to be using this light sky blue. So let's add one more, and I will say Llama Sky Light. And I'm going to add my color here. So this is how we are defining a new color. So let me copy and paste the others, just like that. And right now I can use them by using their names. I can close here, and I'll say Llama Purple. As you can see, this is our purple color. And for the even numbers, BG will be Llama Yellow. Let me close this menu, and I'm gonna give here a padding. Let's see. Okay, we don't have anything inside. Let's say test. Perfect. But I want to expand my items. Remember, we have a gap between each item here. Gap 4. So I'm gonna give here a full size. I can use flex 1. Okay. So let's add our items. We are gonna have this top section, which includes the date and this button, and after the count and the user role. So I'm gonna create a new div. Firstly, we are gonna have a span, let's say the date, the season of the skull, and I'm gonna add here an image. And it's gonna be more.png. Let's give our size 20 pixels. And after that, we are gonna have the user count. Let's give any number for now. And here is gonna be the type name. Let's say h2. Just like that. But we don't have any minimum width. Let's say 130 pixels. But this time, when I shrink my page, it overflows. To prevent this, I will come here and say flex wrap. Instead of overflowing, they are gonna move to the other line. Let me make this bigger, as you can see. This is what we want. Let's move this icon here. I'll say flex, justify between, and align items will be center, just like that. Let's change this color and size. It's gonna be really small. Let's say 10 pixels. I'm gonna give a background. It's gonna be white. Padding X, padding Y, and rounded will be full. And the text will be green. Let's say 600. Okay, what about this text? It's gonna be bigger. 2x large. Font will be semi-bold, and the margin Y will be 4. So we are gonna have space between these and these items. Okay. Now finally, I'm gonna change this text. It's gonna be gray. And by the way, I can change the first letter. I'm gonna capitalize. And we are gonna make them plural. So I'm gonna add here S. Okay, let's say text small. Font weight will be medium. And the text color will be gray 500. Okay. It was really easy. Right now, we can create our first chart. Let's come back. And as you can see, we are going to have 3 charts. And the first one will be this radial chart. To create them, we are going to need a library. There are different kinds of libraries, but my favorite is rechart, I'm gonna open my terminal and I will say npm install rechart. Let's see. By the way, it's not rechart, it's gonna be recharts. Let's take this back. And there is no dash here. Okay. And let's see our examples. As you can see, there are many options here. And for the first item, we are going to be using this radial bar chart. Firstly, we should pass here our data. And after that, we are going to have a container. We will have our bar. We can show here the legend. So let's create that. I'm going to copy here. Of course, we are going to change this data. I'm going to come back, open my menu, and inside components, I'll say count chart. Let's create our component. I will paste this here. And since we are using a visual animation, our component should be a client component. Use client. Let's close here. And let's copy our container. After that, I'm going to explain. I'm going to come here. Firstly, we are going to have this section, the title and the icon. After, we are going to have the chart. And finally, we are going to need this bottom section. Let's create 3 divs. Here is going to be title. Here is going to be chart and bottom. Let me quickly pass this here. And I will say h1 tag. And what was the name? Students. And image. That comes from next image. Source will be more.png. But this one is white, so I will say dark. It's going to be 20 pixels. And let's separate them. Flags, justify between, and align items will be center. Okay, I forgot to add my component here. After user cards, I'm going to add one more div, and here is going to be the middle charts. And one more. And it's going to be the bottom chart. Here is going to be middle, and here is going to be bottom. And here we are going to have 2 items. Let me open my console. And at the beginning, their size will be full, but after the LG screen, here is going to be twice bigger than the left side. So let's come back. I'll say flex, gap between each chart will be 4. At the beginning, it's going to be flex column, but for the LG screen, flex will be row. We are going to have 2 charts. Let's say count chart. An attendance chart. At the beginning with full, if it's LG, it's going to be small. Just like that. And I'm going to give here a specific height. Here is going to be 450 pixels. And I will do the same thing here. But here is going to be bigger. Okay. Right now I can add my chart here. Count chart. And let's see right now. Okay, because we didn't pass this style, but it's not important. Let's come back and get rid of this chart for now. And here is going to be a slash. Okay, as you can see, title and icon. Let's give a background for our container. I'll say white. Rounded will be X large. And I will say width full and height full. And let's give a padding just like that. But as you can see, there is no space here. Let's come back. And I will say flex box, flex column, and gap between items will be 8. Okay. Let's create this bottom section, and after that we are gonna open our chart. We are gonna have 2 items, and each item has this circle div, the count, and this text. I'm gonna give space between them, and I'm gonna center. So let's say flex, justify center, and gap between items will be 16. And here is gonna be a div. It's gonna be the color. Let's give size. And its color will be Llama Sky. And rounded full. Okay, this is our color. After that, the count. We can give any number. And finally, this percentage. Just like that. Let's separate them. Flex, flex column, and gap between items will be 1. Let's give a style for the h1 tag. It's just gonna be bold, font bold, and here is gonna be text X small, and it's gonna be gray. Just like that. Let's do the same thing for the other one. Just like that. Here is gonna be yellow and girls. Okay, let's change this number. It's not important, but anyway. I can change this title. It's gonna be large and the font will be semi-bold. Okay, right now I can open my container. I'm gonna delete this style, this angle, and clockwise. Let me close this menu, and instead of giving here width and height, I can give it to the container. I will say width full, and the height will be 75%. Because if I say 100, it's going to contain all our container. We don't want to do that. But in our example, we are going to have just 2 items. I will get rid of them. We are going to have 2 items, and its name will be girls. The field name will be count. Let's say 50 girls and 50 boys. We don't need this. And these are numbers, not percentage. So let's change here to understand better. And right now, we are going to be using this field. As you can see, in the example, it was UV, but this time it's going to be count. And our progress is 100%, but if I add here a total number, we will see the exact percentage. So I'm going to come here and add one more item. Let's say total. In this case, it's going to be 106. And this time we can see that the 50% of the total is the girls and the other half is the boys. And here is the total number. But I don't want to see that. So basically I can make here white. It's not gonna be visible, just like that. I don't wanna see this legend. Let's get rid of this, just like that. And I can change my style here. I can give different bar size. Firstly, I'm gonna make this 40% and 100%. And the bar size will be bigger, 32. Just like that. By the way, I can change my colors. It's gonna be blue and yellow. And what else we can do? We can get rid of the label, so we are not gonna see the numbers here. And finally, we can add our image here. As you can see, we have an image and it's in the middle of the container. So basically, its position will be absolute. In this case, the parent should be relative. And after this container, I'm gonna add my image. The source will be, what was the name? Let's check. Male, female, PNG. It's gonna be 50. And I'm gonna give a class name and its position will be absolute. Let's center this. Top center, left center. And I'm gonna use translate effect on the X and Y axis. I'm gonna close this menu. Okay, it's centered on the X axis and Y axis. Let's see. Okay, I forgot again. Slash here. And perfect. It's that easy. I'm gonna refresh. We have this awesome animation. And it's exactly the same. Right now we can create another chart. Again, we are gonna have title, this icon, but this time we are not gonna have any bottom section. Let's create one more component. Attendance chart. It's gonna be a client component. And let's use it in our admin dashboard. Here. Let's import. Let me show you here. I'm gonna close this menu. And let's see which chart we are gonna be using. I will come here. And there are many options here. This is the single one. And this is multiple. We can use this. Again, I'm gonna copy here. After we are gonna change our data. Let's paste it. Actually, let's change right now. It's gonna be the name of the weekdays. So I'll say Monday, Tuesday, and the others. I can delete the others. And we are gonna have two items. Present and absent. And here. And we don't need this one. I'm gonna delete. And let's change the numbers. They are too big. It really doesn't matter. You can write whatever you want. Okay. Let's use our chart. I'm gonna come here, copy this container, but of course, I didn't add my title. And the icon, more dark.png. And the width will be 20, height will be 20. And after that, I can add my chart here. just like that. We don't have the container, so I can change this height, let's say 90%. We have the data here, I can delete this margin, and again, I can give the bar size, it's going to be 20, so it will be thicker. Let's see actually. Okay, it's not here because we don't have the height for the parent. As we always do, I'll say background white, rounded algae. I'm gonna give some padding and height will be full. Remember, in the admin page, we gave here height. So it's gonna be 450 pixels. Okay, it's here, but we don't have the data because we have different data keys. Let's change them. Just like that. Okay, the legend is here, but in our example, as you can see, it's on the top. Let's change. It's here. I'll say align left, and the vertical align will be top. Okay, let's give a space here. To do that, we are going to be using wrapper style. By the way, you can find every detail in the documentation. I'm not going to show everything one by one. I don't want to waste your time. I'll say padding top. It's going to be 20 pixels. And the padding bottom, 40 pixels. Just like that. I can also change this shape. It's rectangle right now, but I want to make this circle. I can come here and say legend style. Type, and it's going to be circle. I'll do the same thing for the other one. By the way, we don't need this and this. And perfect. Let's change the colors. Again, I'm going to be using this blue and this yellow. Just like that. I can also make them rounded. I'm going to change this top left and top right. So I will say radius, top left, top right, and the others will be 0. Just like that, because we are not going to change here and here. And also I can get rid of this line on the Y and X axis. To do that, I will come here and axis line, and it's going to be false. Okay, let's check our example. As you can see, we don't have the vertical dots. Let's get rid of them. I'm going to come here and I will say vertical, and it's going to be false. And also I can change the color. It's going to be this gray color. Okay, I can also change the text color on the X and Y axis. I will say thick, and it's going to be this light color. And also I want to get rid of those lines, thick lines, and it's going to be false. Okay, let's do the same thing for the y-axis. If you want to, you can change this tooltip style. I will come here and say content style, and the border radius, let's say 10 pixels. And I'm going to give border color, and it's going to be light gray. Okay. And let's separate them and give a style for this title. Remember, it's going to be flexbox, and here is going to be text large, and semi-bold. Okay, it looks pretty nice. So right now we can add our last item. This last chart. It's gonna be bigger, width full, and the height will be, let's say, 500. And let's create our component. Inside components, I'll say finance component, chart. As we always do, use client, and let's use it here. It comes from components. Okay. Well, let's come here and quickly add our title, this icon, and give our background. Actually, it's gonna be exactly the same. Let's copy this, paste here. I'm gonna import this image. Just like that. Let's see our chart documentation. And we are gonna be using this simple line, or okay, let's use this one. Of course, we are gonna increase the thickness. I'm gonna copy here and paste. Let's change our data quickly. It's gonna be name of the months, and the first one will be income, and the second one will be expense. September, October, November, and one more, and it's gonna be December. Let's change this name. It's gonna be income, and here is gonna be expense, and I'm gonna get rid of here. Okay, let's add our chart. After this div, I'm gonna add it here. And again, I'm gonna make this 90%. And let's see. Okay, let's change our keys. Here is gonna be income, expense, and again, I'm gonna change the color. I'm gonna change this color, get rid of this line, and this tick is gonna be exactly the same. For the X and Y, just like that. I'm gonna add my legend here. Let's copy again. But this time it's gonna be center. And I can decrease here and here. It's gonna be smaller. Okay, let's change color of this component. Remember how we are doing this. Stroke and this gray color. Okay, and also I can give margin between this text and the chart, and I can do the same thing for the x-axis. I'll say tick margin, and let's say 10. Actually, it can be bigger for the y. Okay. And what else? its thickness is bigger. So for each line, by the way, we don't need this. I'm gonna give stroke width, and it's gonna be 5. We are using stroke all the time because it's using SVG. It looks awesome. Let's check here. It's exactly the same. Of course, data is different, but the style is the same. Okay, it's that easy, guys. And if you want to, you can add more components by using different charts. You can find here pretty much everything, but for our example, it's enough for now. For the other dashboards, we can use different charts, but for now, it can stay like that. So let's take care of this right side. As you can see, we have a calendar here. Let's open up the documentation. React calendar. It's a really simple library. Let's install. I will open my terminal, npm install React calendar. After that, I can create my component, and it's gonna be event calendar. And again, it's gonna be use client. And let's copy here. And we are gonna need the useState hook. So when we change the date, we can fetch different events. And here is gonna be the calendar component. Just like that. Okay. Let's add this to the admin dashboard. Let's see first what we are gonna have. We are gonna have 2 items, this component, and they are gonna be vertical. So I will say flex column, and gap between items will be 8. And the first one will be our component. Here, let me close this menu and this terminal. And the other components. Okay. Let me give here the background color, the padding, and the rounded. As you can see, there is no style. Let's check. We can use this style, and after we are gonna customize. Okay, as you can see, it's not 100%, and there is a border here, and the font family is different. Let's take care of them. To do that, we can inspect our item here. Let me zoom in. The class name is React Calendar. We can use this. I'm gonna open my global CSS, and inside I'll write my class name. Firstly, I'm gonna add the size. It's gonna be 100%. But since we are using here a CSS, I have to overwrite. So I'll say important. I'm gonna get rid of the border. And the font family will be Inter. And as you can see, this is what we want. Let's check our example. This color is different. It's sky blue. Let's change that. I'm gonna come here and again inspect. And as you can see, this active color. And I'm gonna change this background and this color. Here is gonna be this sky blue, and the text color will be black. And one more thing, I can increase this font weight. Let's inspect. And I'm gonna take this class name. And perfect. And after this component, we can add our events. For each event, we are gonna have a title, time period, and a description. So let's create a data here. I'll just paste. Of course, it's gonna be temporary. When we have a database, we are gonna fetch this data. Let's say temporary. And using this array, I can create a div. After our component, I'm gonna create a new div. I'll say flags column. And for each item, we are gonna have this gap. Let's map through our item, events.map. For each event, create a div. Let's give here the unique key is gonna be event.id. Remember, we have different IDs. And firstly, I'm gonna create this section that includes the title and date. Of course, I'm gonna separate them. Justify between. And first one will be h1 event.title. I'm gonna write here the span event.time, and after them we are gonna have a p tag, and here is gonna be event.description. Okay, and also we are gonna have our title, events, and this more icon. So let's come here and create a different div, flags item center, justify between. And the first one will be the h1 tag, which is the title and our image. It's gonna be 20 pixels. And more dark.png. Let's give our class name. Text will be X large. Font will be semi-bold. And I'm gonna give margin on the top and bottom. Okay. And for each item, I'm gonna give a border and padding. Let's say 5. I'll say rounded MD. Let's give a border or ring, doesn't matter. And border color will be gray. But I'm gonna increase the height of the top border. And it's gonna be 4. And for odd items, its color will be blue. If it's even, it's gonna be purple. So I'll say border top, Lama sky. And if it's even, border top, Lama purple. Just like that. Let's give our style for the texts. For the h1 tag, it's gonna be semi-bold, and the text will be gray 600. And for this span, again gray, but this time it's gonna be lighter, and the text will be X small. Okay. And finally, this p tag. Firstly, I'm gonna give here a margin. Margin top 2. Text will be gray 400. And the text will be small. Okay. And finally, we can create this component. Let's copy this, open our menu, .tsx, and I'm gonna add it here. Okay, I will close this menu, and again, I'm gonna give this background and padding, just like that. And after, we are gonna have a title, but this time it's not gonna be this icon. Instead, we are gonna give this text. So let's create our section. Flex, item center, justify between, and the first one will be h1 tag, and the second one will be a span, and view all. I'm gonna give my class name. It's gonna be xmall, and it's gonna be gray. Okay, and let's increase this one. X large, and it's gonna be semi-bold. And finally, I can add my announcements. The first one will be background Llama Sky Light. It's gonna be rounded MD, and the padding will be 4. Okay. And I'm gonna give here a space. Actually, let's create a container that contains all our items. I'll say flex column. Gap between each announcement will be 4. And I can give here margin top. Okay. Let's see what we have inside. Again, our top section, title and date and description. It's pretty similar. It's gonna be easy. I'm gonna create my top section. Flex, item center, justify between. And inside h2 tag, let's generate a random text. Of course, it's gonna be short, just like that. And a span. And here is gonna be the date. Let's give a class name. It's gonna be small. Text gray 400. I'm gonna give a background color. It's gonna be white. And we are gonna have a border radius, rounded MD, and I'm gonna give PX and PY. Just like that. Let's change this font weight. It's gonna be medium. And let's create other announcements. I'm gonna copy this and paste 2 more times. And this time here is gonna be purple light. And here is gonna be yellow light. Of course, I forgot adding description. Let's choose our items. And after this div, I'm gonna create a p tag and a random text here. And again, it's too long. Let's delete here and give a class name. It's gonna be small and text gray. Just like that. By the way, I can give here a space. So margin top 1. I can change this logo, by the way. I will open my dashboard layout and I will say font bold. Okay guys, we finished our admin dashboard's homepage, right now we can take care of the other pages. I'm gonna close here and all the pages here. And right now we can design our student page. But before, I'm gonna open my menu and I'm gonna add here one more field, because we are gonna show different list items according to user role. If we are the admin, we are gonna see all this list, but if we are the student or parent, we are gonna only see our exams, assignments, results, and events. So let me update my menu items. You don't have to do that because when you install the starter branch, you will get these items. Remember, the link is in the description. And as you can see, for each list item, we are going to check this array. If it includes the user role, it's going to be visible. So let's scroll down and update our menu. Of course, we don't have the authentication. We don't have the database. For the test purpose, we are going to be using our temporary data. If you open your menu, you are going to see this data. Again, it's going to be inside the starter branch. And as you can see, we have the role here. And for now, it's admin. Let's use it. I'm going to cut here. And I'll say if item.visible includes our user role, it comes from library and data, we are going to return our link. Let's see right now. As you can see, they are still here. If I change here, right now we can see only these items. For the parent, again, exactly the same. And for the teacher, we are going to see more items. Of course, in the second tutorial, we are going to protect our routes using middleware, but for now, it can stay like that. By the way, there is no hover effect here. Let's add. Let's check first. As you can see, we have a background here. Firstly, I'll say rounded MD. And if we hover over, the background color will be Llama Skylight. Just like that. By the way, I can give here a padding. I'll say if it's MD, PX will be 2. Okay, awesome. Let's change this data, admin, so we can see everything. Okay. Right now, let's design our student page. I'm gonna open my example. We have a big calendar here. We can see the subjects weekly or daily. And on the right side, again, we are gonna need these events and announcements. Let's create our layout, and after that, we are gonna need one more library. I will come back, close them, open up the student page. And I'm gonna give my style. Remember, in the admin page, this was our container. We had left and right side. And for the small screens, they are going to be vertical. And if it's LG, they are going to be horizontal. So we will do exactly the same thing here. But this time, it's going to be horizontal if it's X large. Again, I'll say left and right. And I will say width full. And if it's X large, it's going to be twice bigger than the right side. Okay, since we are using exactly the same items, let's copy and paste from the admin. Here is the right side. I'm gonna copy this and paste it here. Of course, I'm gonna change here and import my components. Okay, right now I'm gonna create here one more div and add this title. So I'm gonna come here and create a new div, and its height will be full. I'm gonna give background, a padding, and the rounded will be empty. And inside, let's write our h1 tag, schedule, and I'm gonna write here the class name, let's say for A. Of course, this class name will be dynamic. After the authentication, we are gonna show here the class of the student, and let's give a style. Text will be X large, and the font will be semi-bold. Okay, so let's create our big calendar here. To do that, we are gonna need a library, React Big Calendar. Let's copy this, open our terminal, and I will say npm install React Big Calendar. But also we are gonna need one more library here. For the localization, we are gonna need a date library. You can choose any of them, but in the example, it uses moment. Let's copy this and paste. And I'm gonna install them. And after that, we are gonna create our calendar. I'm gonna copy here. Let's close here and open our menu. And inside the components, I'm gonna create one more component, and it's gonna be big calendar. Let's paste it here. As you can see, there is a warning because we don't have the types. Let's install them. Again, I'll open the terminal, npm install types React Big Calendar. Okay, right now there is no problem. Let's change this name. And let's export this. And as you can see, we are gonna need the events array. And again, you can find it in the data. If you scroll down, you are gonna see that we have some events here. And it's gonna be the student lessons. And again, we are gonna fetch this data from the database. But for now, for the design, we are gonna be using this array. I'm gonna paste this here. We don't need any props. And let's see. I'm gonna use this calendar here. After this h1 tag. Let's see. And there's a problem here that because our component is interactive, in this case, it's gonna be a client component. So I will say use client. Of course, we don't have any style. Let's check. And as you can see, the CSS file is here. I'm just gonna import this. Okay, of course we are gonna fix the design, but before, let's take care of these buttons. When I click here, we are gonna see the weak UI. Let's check here. Just like that. And when I click here, it's gonna show a single day. Let's do that. We are not gonna use all of them. We are just gonna need week and day. But in the example, as you can see, it shows only work week. So weekends are not here. I'm gonna come here and I will say views. And as you can see, our options are here. It's gonna be work week or day. And by default, we are gonna see the work week. You can directly use the name. But if you do that, you will not be able to click here and change the UI. To do that, we are gonna need a useState hook. We are gonna store our view. And when we click on those buttons, we are gonna change it. So let's say const view set view useState. And we are gonna be using big calendar view type. So let's import this. Views that comes from React Big Calendar. and work week. By default, it's gonna be work week. So let's use this here, just like that. And I'm gonna write my type here. And again, we are gonna use a type that comes from React Big Calendar. And of course, this is a component, so I'm gonna return this HTML. So let's wrap this and say return. And here is gonna be curly bracket. Okay. Actually, we don't need div. Let's remove. Let's see. Okay, it's exactly the same. So let's change our event. To do that, I'm gonna create here a function, const handle on change view. We are gonna take a view, let's say selected view. I'm gonna write its type. And we are gonna update our state. Set view will be selected view. Let's use this here. On view event and handle on change view. Okay. Right now, when we click on our buttons, it's gonna fire this function and change our state here. Let's see, I'm gonna click and perfect. Let's change this height. It was 500, but I'm gonna say 98%. So I'm gonna give a small space here. By the way, we don't have to show every single hour here. Let's say school opens at 8 and closes at 5. So we are gonna show only this range. To do that, we can give minimum and maximum dates. I'm gonna create a new date. You can write here any year, month, day, it doesn't matter. The important point is hour. So it's gonna be 8 a.m. And I will do exactly the same thing for the maximum. And here is gonna be 5 p.m., which is 17. Let's see right now. And awesome. Okay, this is what we want. Right now we can give our style. Remember, when we give a style for this calendar, we were using the global CSS. And we are gonna do exactly the same thing here. We are gonna inspect our items and change our style. Let's see what we have here. By the way, I can close this library. As you realize, we don't have any buttons here. We are gonna remove them. We are gonna change the color of these buttons. Move our text here. And after, we are gonna take care of the calendar. Let's fix them first. I'm gonna come here and inspect. And as you can see, the container is React Big Calendar button group. Let's copy this class name and paste it here. And I'll say display none. Remember, we are overriding, so I'll say important, and it's gone. But as you realize, our other buttons are gone too. That means they are using exactly the same name, as you can see. So what we can do is use here the first child. Just like that. So the second child will be visible. What about this text? I'm gonna inspect. As you can see, toolbar label. I'll say text align right. Of course, important. Right now it's on the right. I can give here a padding. Let's change our buttons. This time I'm gonna be using the last child. And I will say font size 13 pixels. They are gonna be smaller right now. And inside this group, as you can see, we have our buttons. Let's check what we have inside. There is a border here. We can get rid of this and we can give a background color. I'm gonna copy and paste. And this time I'm gonna select the buttons and the border will be none. By the way, let's write here important also in any case. And I'm gonna give a background color and it's gonna be this light color. For each button, I'm gonna give margin left. So they are gonna be separated. And as you can see, for the active button, there is a shadow here. And its class name is RBC active. So let's get rid of this shadow and give a different background color. Let's see again the class name. We can choose it just like that. I'm gonna change the background color. And I'm gonna remove the box shadow. Okay, it looks much better. And let's change this border. I'm gonna inspect. And inside this container, as you can see, there is a border, but I'm gonna change this color. It's gonna be lighter. So let's select our class name. And border color is gonna be lighter. Just like that. And there is a header here. Let's see. It's here. We can get rid of this. We are just gonna need this content. So I will say display none. Okay, but there is something wrong here. Let's check our content. As you can see, there is a border on the top. Let's get rid of this. Border none. Awesome. And right now I can decrease this font size. Let's see. I can select all these items. Let's copy this class name. And it's gonna be smaller font size. Okay, let's check what we have here. We have the time slots. Actually, I can give a padding here. Let's duplicate this. And I'm gonna choose the group. And I will say padding 0 from the top and bottom and 20 from left and right. Okay, it's much better right now. And let's change the background color. I'm gonna choose all these groups. And background color will be this blue color. And what about this content? This is the main div. I can change my text size. It's gonna be smaller. Font size will be 14 pixels. Just like that. And let's check the items inside. I'm gonna close here. As you can see, there is an event container here. So we can change the background colors using this event. Let's check first if it's the correct one or not. Okay. Right now for each item, I'm gonna give different color. To do that, we can select each child here. For example, let's choose the first child. Just like that, but its color will be blue. So I'm gonna paste it here. By the way, we can get rid of this border. Let's copy this. For each event, I'm gonna delete the border. The text color will be black. And I can give some padding inside and margin. I can reduce this size. So let's say 99%. Okay, let's see our example. And let's change those colors. I can directly copy and paste. As you can see, we have 8 items. I just assume that the maximum number of the lessons will be 8. So for each lesson, we are gonna have a different color. Just like that. Let's change the color of this text. As you can see, RBC event label is gonna be gray. And let's give margin bottom. Let's close here and open the week view. And as you can see, it looks much better right now. For the day view, and as you can see, it's responsive. Our other items are here. And if it's the LG screen, sorry, XLarge screen, it's gonna be horizontal. Okay, awesome. So I can do exactly the same thing for the teacher page. Let's come here, copy them, open the teacher page, paste here. I'm gonna change the name. Of course, we don't have any class. And we don't need this calendar, I think. Okay, but as you can see, its height is not 100%. So let's check the parent. Remember, it's in the dashboard layout. And as you remember, inside the content section, we have the navbar and children. So what I can do here is I can give a flex box and flex column. And for the teacher page, I'm just gonna say flex one. So it's gonna fit inside the entire container, just like that. And what about parents? We are gonna show exactly the same thing. By the way, let's remove here. Open up the parent page. Paste it here. Just like that. But remember, a parent can have multiple children. So let's write here the student name. So if there is one more child, we can add it under this first schedule. And we completed the home pages for each user. So let's take care of the lists. I will come here, close everything, and inside the app directory, I'm gonna create one more folder and it's gonna be list. Let's see. I'm gonna click here. And we are on the list and teachers page. So let's create. Inside the list, I'll say teachers folder and page.tsx. Let's create our component. Teacher list. So when I click here, we are gonna see our page, but of course, I forgot to add it inside the dashboard layout. That's why we can see our menu and navbar. So I'm gonna grab this list and pass inside the dashboard. And perfect. So let's see what we have here. Firstly, as we always do, we are going to create a div, give this border radius, background, and after I'm going to create one more div inside, and it will include this page title and this right section. And inside that right section, we have the search input and 3 buttons. Let's create. I will say background white, padding 4, and rounded empty. And again, I'll give flex 1, so it's gonna fit inside our container. Let's give a margin here. Perfect. But here is too much. We already have a space here, so I will say margin top 0. Okay, let's create our top section. I'll create a div, and after that we are going to have 2 more sections, this list and this pagination. And inside this top section, we are going to have the title and one more section that includes our search bar and the buttons. But for the search bar, I'm going to create a different component because for each list page, we are going to have exactly the same input. So inside the components, I'll say table search, and I'm going to use it here. And after that, let's create these buttons. Firstly, a container, and inside we are going to have 3 buttons. And inside those buttons, we are going to have the icons. The first one is filter.png. Let's give a size. I'm going to create 2 more buttons, but before, let's give our class names. For the h1 tag, text will be LG, and the font will be semi-bold. But for the small screens, it's not going to be visible. Let's make this hidden at the beginning. And if it's empty, it's going to be block. By the way, let's give here a flex box. Just 5 between. So our items will be horizontal. Let's take care of the right side. At the beginning, this search bar and buttons will be vertical. Let me show you. As you can see, they are vertical. But if the screen is empty, they are gonna be horizontal. So I will say flex, flex column, and if it's empty, flex will be row. I'm gonna center my items, give gap between each item. Let's give a background and see. Okay. So I'll say width full, but if it's empty, it's gonna be auto. Okay, this is what we want. So let's create our search input here. I can delete this background right now. Open my table search component, and inside we are gonna have an image. Actually, it's gonna be a similar component. Let's get this from the Navbar here. I'm gonna import this image, but this time it's not gonna be hidden. I'll say width full, but if it's empty, again, it's gonna be auto. Because for the small screen, it's gonna contain all our div here, it's gonna be full, but on the empty screen, its size will be smaller. Let's give a flex box. Okay, by the way, this text is, okay, there is a mistake here. Let's open our navbar. Okay. And let's take care of our buttons. they are going to be yellow, and if the screen is small, we are going to align them to the right. So I will come here and say flex, item center, gap between each button, and self will be end. So they are going to be aligned. And for each button, I'm going to give my size, flex, I'm going to center my items. Let's make this circle. And the background will be Llama yellow. So let's create two more buttons. Here is going to be sort, and here is going to be plus. Just like that. Let me shrink this page, and perfect. And what about this list? Actually, before that, let's take care of this pagination. Again, I'm going to create a different component. I'm doing this because in the next tutorial, we are going to fetch our data here, but when it comes to pagination or table search, our components will be client components. Let's create our component here and paste inside our div. Actually, we don't need this div. We can directly use pagination or here. Let's add our items. We are going to have three sections. This button, these numbers, and the next button. Firstly, I'm going to give here a padding. I'm going to separate my items using flexbox. Just swipe between, and the text will be gray. And inside the first button, I'm going to give some padding. It's going to be rounded. Let's say empty. Change the background. And the text will be X small. Font will be semi-bold. And if it's disabled, its opacity will be 50%. And we are going to give this cursor effect. So I will say opacity 50. And the cursor will be not allowed. Let me close this menu. Okay, its color is dark, but if I say here disabled, as you can see, its opacity is 50%. Okay, let's create one more button. This time it's not going to be disabled, and I will say next. And between them, let's create a div and add our page numbers. Now for each number, I'm going to give a padding, and if it's active, its background color will be this blue color. So let's say px2. I'm going to give border radius, and if it's active, it's going to be Llama sky. But for the others, we are not going to have any background. Just like that. Of course, text will be small. Let's give flexbox, item center, gap between each item, and the text will be small. Okay, right now we can create our table, but there is something important here. If I open the students list, again, we are using exactly the same table, and here, or any others. So that means it should be a reusable component. So let's create a new component. I will open my menu. Inside the components, I will say table.tsx. Let's use it here. Of course, in the next lesson, we are going to pass our data, but for now, we are going to be using our temporary data here. Let me close here. As you can see, for each list, we are going to have different data. And for the teachers, we are going to be using this array. We have the user ID, teacher ID, name, email, image, phone, subjects, classes, and address. So let's create our table and use them here. And here is going to be a table. Its width will be full, and I'm going to give a margin here, just like that. And after that, let's create our columns. Firstly, I'm going to create a head, and inside I'm going to write my column names. As you can see, we have info, teacher ID, subjects, classes, phone, and address, and actions. Of course, we should take them as a prop. So let's open up the parent component. Let me close them, by the way. It can stay. I will close here and this menu. And let's create our columns. I'll say const columns. And each of them will have a header and accessor. Basically, we are going to use this text here in our head row. And also, we should give different class name for each item because let me shrink this page. As you can see at the beginning, we have only info. But if the screen is empty, we can see teacher ID, subjects, classes, and action. And if it's even bigger, we can see subjects and phone. At the beginning, the info will be visible, so I'm not going to give any class name. But for the second one, let's say teacher ID. I'm going to give a class name, and it's going to be hidden. But if it's empty, it's going to be table cell. Of course, here is going to be column. Again, one more. It's going to be subjects. It's going to be exactly the same. Classes. Again, empty table cell. But if it's phone, it's going to be visible if it's the LG screen. And I will do exactly the same thing for the address. And one more. And it's going to be actions. Okay, let's pass this. Just like that. I'm going to take this as a prop. Let's write its type. It's going to be an object that includes header, accessor, and class name. But remember, it's not required, so I'm going to put here a question mark, and it's going to be a string. Okay, so let's create our first row. And I'm going to map through my columns. Of course, it's going to be an array. Dot map for each column. Return th and write here the name, which is call.header. Of course, we need a unique key. Just like that. Let's see. Okay, they are here. Let's change the style. Firstly, they are not going to be centered. I'm going to align them, change the color, and the text will be small. Okay, and what about body? Again, we are going to take our data from the parent, and for each item inside that data, we are going to return a row. But for each cell, we are going to need different items, just like this one. We have an image here and a container that contains this name and email. So instead of directly sending a text, we should be able to create a custom cell. So let's do this in the parent and send it to our table. I will come back and I'm going to create a function called render row, and it's going to take all the data items, and using that item, it's going to create our row. Let's add here a type. Actually, I can create here. It's not important because in the next lesson, we are going to take this from the database. For now, let's say teacher. We are going to have an ID, teacher ID, name. We are going to have email, but it's not required. Let's say photo, phone, subjects. But as you can see, a single teacher can have multiple subjects. So it's going to be an array, string array, and classes. Again, string array, and finally, address. Let's remove them and use this type here. And let's create our row. And the first item will be the info section. That includes image and those texts. So let's say image is going to be item.photo. Let's give the size 40 pixels. And I'm going to write my class name. Let's shrink this page. As you can see, everything is visible here, but for the MD screen, we are not going to see the image. So I will say if it's MD, it's going to be hidden. If it's X large, it's going to be visible again. So let's say block. By the way, let's give our size, because I want to make this rounded. It's going to be a circle, and the object fit will be cover. And after that, I'm going to create a div, and it's going to include this name and email. Let's say h3 item.name, h4, or let's say p tag, item, and email. Remember, it's not required. Let's separate them, flex column. And for this text, font will be semi-bold. And here is going to be X small, and the text will be gray. And the other items will be easy because they are just texts. So after this, I'm going to create one more item. And here is going to be item.teacher ID. Here is going to be address, phone, classes, but remember it's an array. We are going to take each item and we are going to give comma between them. So I will say join and comma. And I will do exactly the same thing for the subjects. Just like that. And of course, we need our class names. Let's check again. At the beginning, only info will be visible. After, teacher ID, subjects, classes, and phone and address. At the beginning, they are going to be hidden. If it's empty, table cell. And finally, I can create one more item, and it's going to be our actions. We are going to have two buttons here. Let's separate them first. I'm going to create a div, which is a flexbox, item center, and gap between buttons will be 2. The first one will be a link. When we click on this link, we are going to visit a single teacher page. So let's say list teachers and the teacher ID, which is item.id. Let's create our button. Inside this button, we are going to have this icon. So I will say image view.png is going to be 16 pixels. And let's give this background and border radius for this button. I'll say flex, item center, justify center, and rounded will be full, and the background will be Llama sky. And here is going to be delete button, and its color will be purple. I'm going to create one more button outside of this link, but there is something important here. If we are not the admin, we cannot delete any teacher. So again, we are going to be using our role. It comes from library and data. If it equals admin, we are going to show this button. And here is going to be delete.png. Let's change this background, Llama purple, and our row is ready. Let's pass this as a prop, just like that. And we are going to need our data. And again, it comes from our data file, and its name is teachers data. Because for each item, we are going to be using this function, and it's going to create different items. Let's import this, and let's change our type. Right now, we are going to have two more items, render row and data, and let's write them here. We are going to take an item, and it's going to return an HTML block, which is react.react_node. And finally, a data, and again, it can be anything, but it should be an array. So using this data, we can create different rows using this function. So let's say tBody, I'll say data.map. For each item inside, we are going to call render row and pass here our item. Of course, I should wrap this just like that. Okay, by the way, since we are using a map, we need a unique key. So I'm going to come here and pass my unique key here, which is item.id. By the way, there is a problem. Void is not assignable to React node. Because as you can see, we are not returning this HTML block. I should change this curly bracket. Let's see again, and there is no problem. Let's check. As you can see, there's a warning here because we are using an external image. By default, Next.js doesn't allow us to use an external image. To prevent this, we should add this domain name to Next configuration. Let's open up Next config, or let me show you here. As you can see, next.config, and inside this object, I'll say images, remote patterns, and inside this array, I'm gonna add an object which includes the host name. Just like that. So if you have multiple external domain, just add it using this object. Okay, I'm gonna save. Let's refresh. And as you can see, our items are here. But we don't have any style. Let's check. Okay, I'll say class name, flex, item center, I'm gonna give a gap and a padding. Just like that. As you can see, these texts are smaller and there's a border here. And for each even number, we are using different backgrounds. Remember how we are doing this. Firstly, I'm gonna give here a class name. Let me close this menu. And I will say border bottom. And I'm gonna change its color. Let's say 200. If it's even, its color will be this color. Text will be small. And when we hover over, again, we are going to change the background. And it's going to be Llama Purple Light. Just like that. Okay. Let's check our responsive design. When I shrink the page, the image is not visible. And there is something wrong here because we didn't use our class names. I'm going to open my table. And for the columns, I'm going to add my class names. Column.className. Just like that. Okay. So right now everything will be easier. We are going to be using exactly the same component and create different lists. Of course, we don't have this page yet. Let's check here. As you can see, it's exactly the same here. Instead of this email, we are going to show the class. Here we have the student ID, grade, phone, and address. Let's do this quickly. I'm going to close them, open my menu, and inside the list, I'm going to create one more folder and page. And it's going to be students and the page. Actually, we can directly copy and paste from here. Student list page. And let's open our data. I'm going to close here. And I'm going to pass this student data. It's really similar. I'm going to copy this. And paste this data. Let's change this title. I will close this menu. And by the way, if we are not an admin, we shouldn't see this button. So I'll say role. And if it equals admin. Remember, this role comes from library and data. Let's do the same thing for the teachers page, teachers list. Just like that. Okay. Right now I can change my data. Let's see our columns. Again, we are going to have the info. We are going to need the student ID and grade. And we don't need this. They can stay like that. And let's change our type. It's going to be student. We are going to need the ID, student ID, name, email, photo. Phone is not required because they are going to be primary school students. And let's say grade is going to be a number. And let's say class. And that's all, I think. Let's pass this here and change our row. This time, instead of email, we are going to show the student class. And here is going to be student ID. Here is going to be grade. I can remove here. And that's all, I think. Let's see. And perfect. As you can see, class names. Let's shrink this page and check the responsive design. Okay, awesome. It's that easy, guys. Right now, I'm gonna do exactly the same thing for the other pages. For the parents, again, we are gonna have an info section, but we don't need any parent image. Here is gonna be student name, but remember, each parent can have multiple child, phone number, and address. Let's do this quickly. I'm gonna copy this, open my menu, inside the list, I'll say parents page.tsx. I will paste. Let's change the name. Parent list page. Here is gonna be parent, which has an ID name. Here is gonna be students, which is a string array. We don't need photo. Phone number will be required, but the email is not required. Let's move this here. Okay, let's pass our type here. But before that, let's take care of the columns. We have the info, student name, phone, and address. Let's say students and student names. We don't need here. What about our row? I can delete this image. Here is gonna be, again, email. We are gonna have students. But remember, it's an array. Let's separate them using join. Phone and address. And what about our title? Let's change. And the data will be parents data. That comes from library and data. Let's remove this. And as you can see, our items are here. Let's check. Okay, perfect. And the next one is subjects. We are going to create our page, and after that, we'll have the subject name and teachers. Because each subject can have multiple teachers, let's create our page. I'm going to copy here and paste, change the name. And here, ID can stay, name can stay, and here is going to be teachers. And that's all. Let's say subject name, teachers, and actions. Here is going to be subject. The title will be all subjects. And we will have the item name and item teachers. It's going to be required, and let's separate them. I can delete here, here, and here. And that's all. Let's send our data. Subjects data from library and data. We don't need this. Okay, I made a mistake here. Of course, we don't have the info section. It's going to be directly item name. And let's copy this and get rid of this div. And I'm going to create one more TD, and it's going to be our teachers. Let's give the class name hidden and table cell. Okay, let me shrink this page. And this is what we want. And the next one is classes. All are text again, so it's going to be easy. We will have the class name, capacity, grade, and supervisor. Let's copy this. Create a new page inside the list. Classes and page. You already know what we are going to do. I'm going to quickly change the component name. Class list. Here is going to be class. It's going to have an ID, name. Here is going to be number. And here is going to be number. And here is supervisor, which is a string. Let's change them. It's not going to be hidden, but let's copy here. Here is going to be grade. And I'm going to paste it here. And one more. And it's going to be supervisor. Let's change the type. Class. Here is going to be classes. Data will be classes data. And let's change our rows. It's going to be name, grade, and here is going to be capacity, and finally supervisor. Just like that. Let me check quickly. Okay, there is something wrong here, because we don't have class name. Let's copy this and paste here. Okay. What about lessons? We have the subject name, class name, and the teacher name. I will copy this, create my list page, lessons page.tsx. I'm gonna paste it here, change my component name, change my data, lessons data, and the title here. Let's change our type. It's gonna be lesson ID. Here is gonna be the subject name. Here is gonna be the class name. And finally, a teacher. Let's remove them and pass this type here. By the way, we can remove here. Okay. And inside columns, we are going to have the subject name, the class name, I can remove here. It's going to be visible. And let's say teacher. And I can remove this one. Let's change the row. It's going to be subject name, the class name. In any case, it's going to be visible, so I can remove this class name. And finally, teacher. I can remove this. Let's see our page. Okay. Actually, we can change those buttons because there is not that much information to show to a user. We have the name, class, and teacher. So we don't have to create a single page for the lessons. Instead, I can change this button and show here an edit button. So when we click here, we can update the lesson. So let's come back. And instead of this view, I'll say edit. Okay, I can do the same thing for the classes, subjects, and parents, because again, we have all the information here. We don't need something else, but for the student and teacher, we are going to create a single page. So let's change them quickly. Classes, subject, and parents. Okay, let's create the next one. Let's come here. Okay, we have the subject name, the class name, teacher, and the date. Let's come here, copy from these lessons, open our menu, and create a new page. Page.tsx. I will paste it here. Change the component name and the type, ID, subject, class, teacher, and additionally, we are going to have a date. It can stay as string. As I said, after the database, we are going to change our types. Let's create one more. And here, and I'm going to change the title. Okay, it's not here because we didn't pass our exams data. Okay. The assignments will be exactly the same. I'll copy. Here is going to be exactly the same, but instead of date, I will say due date. Assignments data. Of course, here is going to be due date. Just like that. Okay. And here we have the results, the subject name, the student name, its score, teacher and class, and date. Let's create our page. I will copy here. Result list page. We have the ID, subject, class, teacher. Here is going to be student. And we can write the type of the result. I don't know if we need this or not, but anyway, let's say exam or assignment. I'm going to add a date. And finally, a score. Let's say number. I'm going to add student. Let's add here the score. It's going to be hidden at the beginning. I'm going to move this class here. Again, it's going to be hidden. And finally, we are going to have a date. Okay, let's change here. student, score, teacher, class, and date. Let's see the small screen. Okay, there is something wrong here. Because it's not hidden, but here it's hidden. Let's remove this. Okay. So let's take care of the events. We have the title, class, date, and times. I'm gonna copy as we always do. Event list page. ID, title, class. We don't need this. We are gonna have the date, start time, and end time. Let's change here. Here is gonna be date and two more. Start time and end time. Okay, let's change here. Here is going to be class, date, and the times. Let's remove this. Change our title and this data. Okay. Let's see. This is our page. Perfect. Okay. And the last one is announcements. And we have the title, class. There is something wrong here. We are going to fix that. The date and actions. I'm going to copy, create my last page. I'm going to change the component name. ID, title, class, and date. Let's remove them. And here. And the data will be announcements data. Okay. Of course, I'm going to change this data. But for now, it can stay like that. We finished our list pages. Right now, we can create a single teacher page. When I click here, we are going to show a single page, and using this unique ID, we will fetch the teacher information. Let's see what we are going to have. And let's write here any number. And as you can see, we have the user information, some small cards here, the teacher's schedule, there's a small chart here, announcements, and here we have the shortcuts. Basically, when we click on any of these links, for example, if I click here, it's gonna open the lessons list page, but additionally, it's gonna add here a search param. So the teacher ID will be the ID of the user. So when we visit this page, it's gonna automatically fetch the data that belongs to this teacher. So let's create our layout. Again, we are gonna have two sections, left and right. Here is gonna be the information and this schedule. But at the beginning, the left and right side will be vertical. So we will be using flex column. And if the screen is X large, as you can see, they are gonna be horizontal. Let's create. Firstly, I will create my page, and after, I'm gonna create this layout. Let's close everything here, and inside the list page and teachers, I'm gonna create a new folder. And since we are using the unique IDs, I'm gonna write it like that. Basically, it represents the teacher ID here. It's gonna be dynamic. And inside, I'm gonna create my page. Let's create the component. I'll say single teacher page. And let's give here flex 1, P4. It's gonna be a flex box. But at the beginning, it will be vertical. But if it's X large, it's gonna be row. And also, I'm gonna give a space between items, just like that. And let's say left and right. Remember how we are giving size, width, full, and if it's X large, here is gonna be 2 units and here is gonna be 1 unit. I'll say left and right. Okay, let's shrink our page. As you can see, they are vertical. Okay, so let's create our first component here, the user card. I will come here. Let's write a comment. Let's say info card. I'm gonna create a div and let's see what we have inside. We have two sections. Actually, before this information, we should create a wrapper for all these components, because here is gonna be the top section and here is gonna be the bottom section. So firstly, I will say top. And it's gonna contain our user info cards and these small cards. Let's create one more. And after the top, I'll say bottom. And here is gonna be the teacher's schedule. Okay, let's give a style for this top section. At the beginning, they are gonna be vertical. And at this point, it's gonna be horizontal. So let's say flex column. If it's LG, it's gonna be flex row. And gap between each item here. And what about this card? I'm gonna change its color. It's gonna be Llama Sky. I will give some padding. Rounded will be MD. And the size of this card and this small cards container will be the same. So I can use flex 1. And I can use it here also. And finally, I will say flex, and gap between items will be 4. And inside this card, we are going to have two sections, the user image and the user information. Let me make this small again. And as you realize, this section is twice bigger than this section. So again, I'm going to give a specific width. Let's create our image container and the text container. And here is going to be 1 unit. And here is going to be 2 units. Let's add our image inside. is gonna be a big image, 144. I'm gonna give a class name. Let's give our size, because it's gonna be rounded full, and object fit will be cover. Let me copy and paste my image here. I will close this menu, and inside this section we are gonna have this title, description, and those items. So again, it's gonna be vertical. So let's say flexbox, flex column, justify will be between, and gap between items will be 4. Let's create our h1 tag. I'm gonna write here any random name, and a p tag. Of course, it's too big. Let's make this shorter. And after, I'm gonna create a div that contains our items, and each item has an image and text. But there is something important here. At the beginning, they are vertical, but if I make this bigger, as you can see, there are 2 items in a single row. That means we are gonna be using flex wrap. Firstly, I'm gonna give style for the title and description, and after, I'm gonna handle here. Text will be X large, and font will be semi-bold. And here, text will be small, and it's gonna be gray. Okay. And here, I'll say flexbox, item center, justify between, and gap between our items will be 2. I'll say flex wrap, text will be X small, and the font will be medium. So let's create our first item. I'm gonna add here the image, blood type is gonna be 14, and here is gonna be the text. Let's write the blood type. Let's create other items. Here is gonna be the date. Here is gonna be the mail. And the phone number. Let's give a style for them. For each screen type, we are gonna give different size. Let's check. At the beginning, their size will be full. If it's empty, 1 out of 3. Let me open my example. By the way, they should be horizontal. I'll say flex, item center, and gap between the icon and text will be 2. Let's come back here. As you can see, after the empty screen, we are gonna see 2 items. And if it's LG, our layout will be horizontal. In this case, the right side will be too small for this text, so I can increase the size. So let's say with full again, just like that. And if it's 2x large, again, we are gonna see 2 items here. Just like that. What about the other cards? At the beginning, they are gonna be vertical. And again, the container will be flex wrap. So when we expand this page, as you can see, we are gonna have 2 rows. So let's come back. I'll say flex, gap between items, justify between, and flex will be wrap. And inside, we are gonna have 4 items. Let's create the first one. Inside, we are gonna have the image name is gonna be 24. And also I'm gonna give a class name and my size. And after that, I'm gonna create here a div. And this div contains this text and this text. Let's say h1 tag, 90%, and a span, and I'm gonna write the title. Let's give a style, text X large, font semi-bold, and text will be small, and its color will be gray. Let's say 400. And I'm gonna create my other cards. Let's change the title and description. And of course, the images. Okay, so let's give our background, and after we are gonna give different size for each screen type. As you can see, the background is white, and at the beginning, their size will be full. So I'm gonna choose all my cards here. And inside the class name, I'll say width full. Before that, let's give our background. Padding, rounded will be empty, and it's gonna be a flex box. And the gap between the icon and the text will be 4. And on the MD screen, we'll have 2 items, but I cannot write here with half, because if I do that, we are gonna see here a single item. Let me show you. This is the small screen and MD. This is happening that because remember we have here a gap. That means I cannot give here 50%. So let's give something smaller for the 8%. Just like that. And if it's X large, again, there is only one item per row because our layout is horizontal right now. That means I need something smaller. So I will say, if it's X large, it's gonna be 45%. And finally, if it's 2X large, again, it can be 48%. And let's see. Okay, there is something wrong because there's a mistake here. I forgot giving width. And perfect. Right now I can add here the teacher's schedule. I'm gonna give here margin top. Background will be white, rounded MD. I'm gonna give a padding, and remember we are gonna use a big calendar here. That means we need a specific height. Let's say 800. And inside we are gonna have a title, and it's gonna be teacher's schedule. Of course, we shouldn't use a single quote here. So let's use this just like that. And after I'm gonna add my big calendar component. That comes from components and big calendar. And perfect. We are gonna fetch the teacher's schedule in the next lesson. For now, it can stay like that. And let's take care of the right side. Let's see what we are gonna have. The shortcut links, a small chart here, and the announcements. We already have this. Let's add that component. And I'm gonna create a component that includes our links. Again, PG will be white, padding will be 4, and the rounded will be MD. And inside we are gonna have a title that is shortcuts. Text will be X large, and the font will be semi-bold. And after that, I'm gonna create a new div. Let's give a space between this div and the h1 tag. It's gonna be flex. Gap between each link will be 4. And I'm gonna be using flex wrap. Text will be XML. And finally, the text will be gray. Let's create our links. I'm gonna import this link that comes from Next.js link. For now, it can stay empty. And let's say teachers, classes, students, exams, and assignments. Let's give a class name for each of them. Firstly, the padding will be 3, rounded MD, and I'm gonna give different background for each item. The first one will be Lama Skylight, Lama Purple Light, Yellow Light. Let's give here pink color, and again Lama Skylight. Just like that. By the way, I need to give space between my items. So let's say flex column, and gap between each component will be 4. And finally, I'm gonna create one more component here, and it's gonna show this pie chart. Let's remember our documentation. We are gonna be using a pie chart. This one. So let's copy here, open our menu, and create our component. Let's create the function. And remember, if you are using something interactive, your component should be a client component. And I'm gonna paste my library items. And inside the data, we are gonna have only 2 items. This blue one and yellow one. So let's say 92% and 8%. I can give a specific color. It's going to be our blue color. And this yellow color. Let's add our chart. I'm going to copy this responsive container. Just like that. But before that, we are going to need one more container here that includes this title and this icon. And of course, for the container, we are going to give white background, border radius, and this padding. Rounded MD. Let's give a specific height here. And after that, I'm going to create one more div that includes our h1 tag and the icon. Let's import more dark. It's going to be 16 pixels. And here is going to be bigger. Text X large. And the font will be semi-bold. Of course, I should separate my items. Flex, align item center, justify between. Let's see. Of course, we didn't add our component. Let's add here. Perfect. Let me close this console. And let's see what we are going to have here. Firstly, I'm going to increase this inner radius because we are going to have a text here. Let's come back. I'll open my component. And instead of this outer radius, I'll say inner radius. And let's say 70. So you can change the thickness of this bar. If you say 20, it's going to be thicker. And if you say 90, for example, is gonna be much smaller. Let's make this 70. And I want to get rid of those labels. Let's remove this. Perfect. And right now I can add my text container here. Remember how we are doing this? Its position will be absolute. And if you are using position absolute, the parent should be relative. So I will say relative. And after this container, I'll say div. And I'm gonna center my items. Remember how we are doing this. Transform effect. I'm gonna move it on the X and Y axis. And center my texts. Let me close this menu. And inside we are gonna have two items. It's gonna be the score and a p tag. Let's see. Just like that. I just made up something. Llama total score. You can write here whatever you want. And let's give a class name. It's gonna be really big. 3x large. Of course, not style. Class name. And the font will be bold. And here is gonna be small and the text color will be gray. Let's say X small and the text will be gray 300. Just like that. And again, I'm gonna add one more item here. This text. So I'm gonna create another div. And again, its position will be absolute because this chart contains all our container. Remember, we have the width and height here. By the way, we don't need them. We already have size here. Okay. So right now, let's give position absolute for our text. Actually, let's make this h2 tag. Font will be medium. Position absolute. I'm gonna give the position is gonna be 16. I will give left 0, right 0. And if I say margin auto, it's gonna fit inside our container. And if I say text center, it's gonna center my item. Okay, let's refresh the page. We have this beautiful animation. And we finished our single teacher page. Let's do the same thing for the student page. I'm gonna change here. And let's see our example. It's gonna be similar, by the way, not student, students. And here we are gonna change this title and those cards and these links. It's gonna be really easy. So let's copy everything here, not here. Single teacher page. And let's create one more page. And it's gonna be inside students. Again, I'm gonna be using dynamic IDs page.tsx. Let's change the name. Single student page. Let's change this image. He is too old to be a student. And I'm gonna change this name. Just like that. Let's change this one. I'll say 6th grade. Lesson numbers. And here is gonna be the class name. Let's change here. And the others. So I'm gonna choose all of them. And I will say student. Let's change here. Students, lessons, teachers. We already have exams and assignments. So let's say results, just like that. And perfect. So we finished our single pages. Right now, let's create the components for the data mutation. For example, if I click here, we are going to open a model here that we can add a new teacher. But for each page, we are going to have different requirements. So we should add different components for each list here. So let's close here and everything here. I'm going to scroll down, and inside the components, I'm going to create one more component, and it's going to be form model. It's going to be a client component because we are going to be using a click event. Let's create our component. And right now for each request, we are going to return different buttons. If we want to add a new item, we are going to be using this button. If we want to edit, we are going to be using this button. And if we want to delete the item, we are going to be using this delete button. And if you want to delete the item, you are going to need the item ID. And if we want to edit the item, we are going to need all this data. So basically, we are going to need 4 items: the table name, the request name, post, update or delete, the item ID, and the item data. When we create, you are going to understand better. I'm going to come here and say table, request type, data, and ID. I'll say table. It can be a teacher, student, and other table names. I'm just gonna copy and paste. And we are gonna have the request type, which can be create, update, or delete. We are gonna have here the data, let's say any for now, but it's gonna be optional because we are gonna need it only when we try to update item. The ID will be a number. Again, they are not important for now for the design because we don't have any database. They can stay like that. In the next tutorial, when we create our schema, we are gonna take the type from the schema. Okay, let's return our button. I'll say button. Let's self-close this. I'll say class name. And for each button type, we are going to give different background colors and different sizes because remember, this one is bigger than those. Let's see again. I'm going to open up any list page here. As you can see, for the update and delete button, the width will be 7. But for the add button, the width will be 8. And its background color is yellow. So let's write our class name here. I'll say const size, and I will write my condition. If the type equals create, it's gonna be 8. If it's not, it's gonna be 7. I can do the same thing for the background color. And I will say if the type equals create, it's gonna be yellow. If it's update, it's gonna be Llama Sky. And if it's delete, it's gonna be BG Llama Purple. Let's use them here. I'm gonna pass here the size and the other common class names. They all are the same, so we can use it directly like that. And finally, I'm gonna pass the background color. And one more thing, we closed this here, but I forgot adding the image. We are gonna have our icons. It's gonna be delete PNG, update PNG, or plus PNG. Let's actually make this create. And this is gonna be update. And the delete is here. Okay. So I can change here right now. And it's gonna be type.png. So it's gonna be create PNG, update, or delete PNG. And here is gonna be 16. And right now I can use my button on the list pages. Let's open up the teachers page. And here. And instead of this button, we can use our model. And the table name is teacher. And the type is create. I'm gonna save, refresh the page, and as you can see, it's still here. Nothing has changed. Let's do the same thing for the delete button. Here. The type will be delete, but this time, if we want to delete this item, we are gonna need its ID. So let's say item.id. And again, nothing has changed. So let's do exactly the same thing for the others. I will copy here, students. I will import. It's gonna be create. We don't need this ID. I'm gonna comment this out and paste my component. Okay. What about parents? Right now, we are gonna also add this update button. Let's open up the parents here. So let's remove this, paste our model. The table name is parent. By the way, I didn't change here. It's gonna be student. And also, I'm gonna change here. It's gonna be update. And we are gonna pass all the data we have. Just like that. By the way, we can update this item only if we are the admin. So I'm gonna move it here. Let's use React fragments. Just like that. And here. And I'm gonna delete this. Let's refresh. And perfect. So let's do exactly the same thing for the others. Let me do it quickly. Okay, I added my buttons for each pages. Right now, let's close everything and open up our model component again. And when we click on those buttons, we are gonna show here a model. So we are gonna need a use state here. Let's create somewhere here, const open, set open, use state. At the beginning, it's gonna be closed. And when we click on this button, it's gonna be open. So let's write an onClick event, set open, and it's gonna be true. So let's write our model here. I'll say if it's open, show here a div, and it's gonna contain all our application, and we are gonna give a background color, and after that we are gonna create our model here. So let's say screen size It's going to be full screen. The position will be absolute. Left 0, top 0. And the background color will be black. And I'm going to reduce the opacity. Let's say 60. Let me close this menu. And it's going to be over everything. So let's give Z index. And I'm going to center everything inside this div. Align item center, justify content center. So inside, let's create our model. I'll say div. It's going to be white. I'll give a padding. Rounded MD. Let's just say hello. And let's try. I'm going to refresh my page. I'll click. And as you can see, our model is here. Let's try the others. I'll click here. Perfect. And let's come here and try to update. And awesome. And also I can add here a close button. I'll create one more div. I'll add an image. It's going to be close PNG. And its size will be 14 pixels. Let's move it somewhere here on the top right. So again, I'm going to be using absolute. Let's give the position. I'll say cursor pointer. And of course, it's going to be inside this parent div. And of course, the parent should be relative. Okay, let's give here a size so we can see better. At the beginning, it's going to be 90%. If it's MD, it's going to be small. 70%. For LG, it's going to be 60%. For X large and 2X large. Let's say 50. And 40. Let's see. Okay, our button is here. Let's check our responsive design. As you can see at the beginning, 90%, 70, 60, 50, and 40. Okay. And when we click on this button, again, we are going to change our state. This time it's going to be false. Just like that. Okay. For each table, we are going to use different forms, but there is something common here, and it's our delete request. When we click on this button, we are going to show a model that asks if we want to delete the item. So since we are using exactly the same model, we don't have to create a new component. I can directly write it here. Let's create a new form. And I will write here my condition. If the type equals delete. And also remember, when we want to delete the item, we are going to need the ID. We set here optional, so it can be undefined. To prevent this, I'll say also if there's an ID, show here a form. If not, let's say create or update form for now. And inside this form, we are going to have a span and we are going to ask, are you sure? All data will be lost. Are you sure you want to delete this item? And for each table, we are going to show different name here. Remember, our table name is here. We can use it. And after that, we are going to create a button and delete. Let's give our style. I will say P4, flags, flags column, and gap between button and this text will be 4. For this span, I'll say text center, and the font will be medium. And finally, for this button, I'm gonna give a danger color, something like that. The text will be white. Let's give some padding. It's gonna be rounded. I will delete the border. Let's see. I'm gonna copy this and paste inside my model. Here. I will save and let's see. I'm gonna click here and as you can see, our form is here. Let's make this smaller. Width will be maximum content and I'm gonna center this button, self-center. And perfect. So when we click on this button, we are gonna run this action. We are gonna send the item ID and using server actions, we are gonna delete this item. And of course, it's gonna be in the next tutorial. This is the subject page, but even if I use different component here, different list page, when I click on this button, it's gonna always show this model. But when it comes to create or update, we are gonna show different forms for each item. We are creating different forms because we need different requirements. For example, for the subject, we are just gonna have the subject name and teacher. But for the teachers, we are gonna upload an image. We will be able to select some subjects. And there are tons of different information here. This is why we need to create different forms for each list here. Let's do that. I'm gonna come here, open my menu, and inside the components, let's create a new folder. I'll say forms. And the first one will be teacher form. Again, use client, create our component. We are going to return a form and we will get the type. Again, it's going to be create or update. So we are going to handle both of them in a single form. So when we create here an input, and if we try to create a new teacher, we are going to enter a new text. And if it's the update mode, we are going to add here the default value, and we are going to use our previous data and use its field. Just like first name, surname, whatever it might be. So in this case, again, we are going to need the data. But I will say it will be optional because for the create, we are not going to need any data. And for now, again, I'm going to say any, because we don't have any database yet. So let's create our inputs. To do that, we are going to be using React hook form. Let me open the documentation. It basically allows us to validate our form inputs. Of course, we can do it without using any library, but I really like this library. It's lightweight, its validation is awesome, it doesn't render your component, and it's really popular. So let's see how to use it. Firstly, we are going to create here our inputs and write here their types like string, number, date, or whatever it might be. And after creating our form and inputs, we are going to register our object field into this input. And after that, we'll be able to write our requirements, like required, minimum and maximum, or any other condition. But for the validation, I want to use Zod. If you watch my previous tutorials, you know how to use Zod. Let's open up. As you can see, we are creating a Z object and inside our inputs. And here is going to be our validation requirements. But how we are going to use Zod with React hook forms? It's really easy. They have an awesome library for that. Hook form resolvers. And I'm gonna choose Zod. And this is the main structure of our form. We are gonna create our schema, right here our requirements, and when we use React hook forms, we are gonna pass here the resolver. It's gonna be Zod resolver, and we are gonna pass here our schema. And after that, only thing we should do is create our inputs and register here our schema field, like name, age, or any other fields. And after doing that, we will be able to show our input errors, just like that. Errors.field name here and message. Let me create, and after you are gonna understand better. Firstly, I'm gonna install my libraries. React hook form. I will open my terminal. I will say npm install React hook form, Zod, and also hook form resolvers. After that, let's create our schema. I can close here and this menu, and let's write it here. I'm gonna import, and firstly, we are gonna have username. It's gonna be a string, minimum, let's say 3, and we can write here different message, like username must be at least 3 characters. And I can add different requirements like maximum, let's say 20. Of course, we don't need this comma. And let's change here. And after we are gonna have email. Again, it's gonna be string and its type will be email. And if its type is incorrect, we are gonna show a different message. Let's say invalid email address. Let's create other ones. Password is going to be a string. Again, I'm going to give minimum. And it's going to be 8. Just like that. If you want to, you can add here different requirements. But I'm going to keep it short. We are going to have a first name. Let's copy this and paste. I'll say minimum 1. That means this field is required. So let's say first name is required. I'm going to add a comma here. And if you have any optional field, you can just write here optional. But it's going to be required. I just wanted to show you. So let's create the others. Last name, phone number, address, birthday, and let's change here. By the way, here is going to be date, so I can add my message here. And we can also use a select element. Let's use it here. To do that, we are going to be using enum. And inside an array, we are going to write our options. And let's write our message here. And also, we are going to have the user image. To do that, we are going to be using instance of and file. Let's write our message. Image is required. Let's add here a comma. And that's all for now. For this tutorial, it's not that important because we don't exactly know which fields we are gonna need in the next tutorial. But I just want to show you how you can validate your inputs. Let's see what we are gonna do after that. we are going to use useForm, and inside the resolver, we are going to pass our schema. Let's copy this and paste it here. I'm going to import just like that. Let me show you. Hook form resolver Zod and useForm from React hook form. Okay. There's a typo here. And after that, let's create our inputs and show our errors. Let's see our example. I'm going to open up teachers. Let's try to add. And as you can see, we are going to have a title, the section title, and for each input, we are going to have a label, the input itself, and here is going to be our error. Let me show you. I will just write one character. I will create, and as you can see, it shows our errors. And the best thing is, if I write here 2 more characters, this error is going to be disappeared. Let's try 1, 2, and as you can see, it's gone. Let's write here a correct email. Perfect. This is why we are using this form. It's really easy to validate your inputs. So let's create them. Firstly, I will say flags column, and gap between each item. Let's add our title here. Create a new teacher. Text will be X large and semi-bold. And after that, we are going to write our section title, authentication information and personal information. Let's create a span. Text will be X small and gray. And the font will be medium. Let's create one more, and it's going to be personal information. And we are going to have 3 inputs here, username, email, and password. And I'm going to spread register and right here the input name. Let's remember again, it's username. Let's give a class name quickly. I'll just give a ring, let's say 1.5 pixels. I'm going to change its color. It's going to be gray 300. I'm going to give a padding. Rounded will be MD. And finally, text will be small. And after that, we can show our error. Let's remember. Errors and field name and message. If it exists, we are going to show it inside this p tag. Just like that. Of course, its type will be string. Let's say to string. And that's all. Let's see. It should be a string, minimum 3 and maximum 20. Let's try. Of course, we should import our form first. When we click here, we are going to see our component here. So let's open up our model. Of course, for each page, we are going to show different form, but for the test purpose, let's directly call it here. Teacher form. And let's give a type, create, and let's see. Okay, it's here. Of course, we don't have a submit button. Let's create. I'll say if the type equals create, we are going to write here create. If not, it's going to be update. Let's give a style quickly. It's going to be blue. Text will be white. Let's give a padding and rounded will be MD. Let's see. Okay, let's check our onSubmit event. Let's say onSubmit. Let's create a function. And we need to use here this handle submit, and it's gonna include our data. And after that, you can do whatever you want using this data. Let's say console log. Let's write a character and create. And as you can see, our error is here. If I write 2 more letters, and it's gone. If I take it back, it's here, it's gone. This is how it works. Of course, its color should be red. So let's write here a class name. Text will be xmall and red. Okay. And also we are gonna need a label here. Let's remember again. We have the label. So before this input, I'm gonna create a label. And let's say username. Text xmall and gray. Okay, so right now we can create other input items. Each item has a label, input, and error. So I can wrap my items here. Just like that. I'll say flags, flags column, and gap between each item will be 2. And at the beginning, let me show you. I'm gonna shrink this page. As you can see, full screen, and we can scroll here. After that, we are gonna see 3 items per row. So let's say width full, and if it's empty, it's gonna be this size. I'm not writing 3 here because we have a gap. It should be smaller than that, and the input will be width full. So it's gonna fit inside all our container here. Okay. This is what we want. Right now, instead of writing exactly the same thing again and again, I want to create a common component and pass my values as a prop. So let's say input field .tsx. I will create my component, and let's write our types here. Firstly, we are going to have the label, this text, type of the input, and by default it's going to be text. We are going to need the register. Remember, we are spreading here. We are going to need the input name, which is here. And if it's the update mode, as I told you, we are going to need a default value. We will have the error. And if we need anything else in the future, we can pass them using input props. Let's write the types. Actually, let me write these types here. Input field props. Label will be string. Type will be string, but it's optional. By the way, it should be semicolon. It's not an object. And register, let's say any. The name, the default value. Again, it's optional. Error, and its type will be field error. That comes from React hook form. And input props. And we can pass here any other attributes. So let's say React input HTML attributes. And we are going to pass here the type of the element. And it's going to be HTML input element. So let's pass this here. Just like that. There's a typo here. Okay. After taking our items, we can return our input. So I'm gonna copy this. Let's cut and paste here. Just like that. And here is gonna be label. Type will be type, register, and here is going to be name. And if we have any other prop, we are going to pass it here, just like that. And since we are using field error here, we can directly send its message, just like that. Of course, if it exists. Okay. And also I'm going to pass this default value. And let's use it on our teacher form. The label will be username. Name will be username. Default value. If we have the data, we are going to pass the username here. Register will be register. And the error will be errors dot the field name, which is username. Let's import this. Just like that. I'm gonna save. There's something wrong here, by the way. Let's check. Error message. Its type is field error. By the way, here is gonna be optional. Oh, we didn't pass here any field values. It takes it as any. To prevent this, we can use our schema type. I'll say type inputs Zod type of schema. So we are going to pass our schema here. It's going to take its type. So we can pass our inputs here. And right now we don't have any error. Okay, let's see. I'm going to refresh. Open my component here. Okay, there is something wrong because I used curly brackets here, but it's already JavaScript here. We don't need to do that. So I'm gonna pass it directly like this. Let's see. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, it's exactly the same. Let's test, and perfect. Okay, right now I can add my other inputs, like email, password. Let's come back. 2 more. Let's say type email. We don't need to do this actually, but anyway. Here's gonna be password. And I'm gonna add here type because I don't wanna see a plain text here. And after that, the others. I'm just gonna copy and paste the first name, last name, phone, address, and blood type. It's exactly the same, but I'm gonna leave them because they are a little bit different. I will come here and paste them. Okay, there is something wrong here because we didn't add. Let's add blood type. Okay. And after that, we are gonna need a date. So let's create one more. Its label will be birthday. And only thing I should change here is the type of the input. And it's gonna be date. That's all. Just like that. By the way, our items are not horizontal. Let's create here a div, flex, justify between. Flex will be wrap, and gap between items will be 4. Let's cut this and pass after our last input, just like that. And I will do exactly the same thing here. Let's copy this, paste here, and close our div. Okay, and what else? We are going to have a select element here. So instead of input field, I'm going to create a select element. I will copy this, paste here. I'm going to change the label. This time we are going to need a select. Let's give our class name here. It's going to be exactly the same. Just like that. And we are going to pass here the register and the field name and the default value. Let me close this menu. Just like that. And inside we are going to have the options. The first option will be male and female. Let's fix this error. Let's see. Okay, perfect. And finally, we are going to add this upload button. Again, I'm going to create a new div, change the label, but this time we are also going to need this image. So let's say flags, align item center, and gap between image and text will be 2. And I will say cursor pointer. And I'm going to add here Next.js image. It's going to be upload.png, 28 pixels. And let's add here a span. And I will say upload a photo. And here is going to be an input, but its type will be a file. Let's change here. I will spread the register here. And the field will be image. Let's see. Okay, it's here, but as you realize, our input is here. Let's get rid of this. Class name. And it's going to be hidden. But whenever we click on this label, it's going to run our input. To do that, we should write here HTML4 and add here any ID. Let's say image. And I have to add this ID here, just like that. So when I click here, as you can see, it opens my image folder. But why it's vertical? Because our div ends here. Let's move it underneath our last input, just like that. And perfect. Let's center this. I will just say justify center. Okay, let's try. I'm gonna write any letter here and create. And as you can see, all our errors are here. Let's test this one. Remember, it can be only male or female. If I change those values, you can see that there is an error here. Okay, it works. This is how we are creating our forms. And if we are on the update page, let's actually open our single teacher page here. And let's say after this name, I want to show my model. Table will be teacher. Request type will be update. And to update our table, we are going to need the previous data. Let's add our items. I'm just going to copy and paste. We are just testing. It's not important. I'm gonna save. Let's open our single teacher page. And when I click here, it opens the create mode because remember, on our form model, we were using here a test form. Let's say update and pass here our data. And as you can see, all previous items are here. Right now we can just change here and update our item. Okay, it works. By the way, let's change here. I'm gonna create here a div, flex, item center, and gap. Okay, if you want to, you can change this icon, but it can stay like that. So right now we are gonna do exactly the same thing for other forms. Let me create one more, and after we are gonna use the same way and create other forms. And they are gonna be easy because we just have a couple of inputs. They won't be that complex. So let's create for students. I will open my menu and inside forms, actually let's copy this and paste and change its name. And the component name. Let's see our schema. Again, we are going to have username, email, and password. First name, last name, phone, address. Actually, they all are going to be the same. So we are not going to change anything here except this title, authentication information, personal information. And as I said, this is not important because we don't have any database yet. In the next lesson, we are going to update our forms because probably we are going to need more items here. But for now, for the design purpose, I think it was a good example. Right now you know how to create different forms for each request. Let's test it. I will say student form. Type will be create again. And let's remove here. I'm gonna click, and as you can see, we are on the student form. So what about our condition? For each table, we are gonna show here different form. To do that, we can create here an object. Let's say const forms, and we are gonna pass here our table names. So let's say key is gonna be a string. And for each key, we are going to get our type and data and return our components. So I will say type, it can be create or update. And we are going to take our data. For now, it can be any. And it's going to return a JSX element. Let me create, and after you are going to understand better. Firstly, I will say the teacher key. We are going to take the type and data, and we are going to return, let's say, teacher form. We are going to pass the type here and the data. And right now, for each table, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. For student, we are going to call the student form and pass our type and data. They can stay like that for now because we have only two forms. So right now we can use this object and choose our component according to this key. So let's come here. And right now, instead of this student form, I'm going to be using my forms, and I will say the table name and pass here type and data. Of course, there is a problem here because it can also be delete, but for our forms, we said it can be create or update. So let's write one more condition here. Remember, if it's the delete method, we are showing this form, and I will say if it's the create or update, it's gonna be this form. And if it's not, let's say form not found. Okay, let's see. We are on the students page. When I click here, it's gonna be the student form. And on the teachers page, when I click here, it's gonna be the teacher form. So we can create different forms for each page and pass them here. But there is something important. Since we are using client components, Next.js is not going to apply code splitting by default. So when we import all our forms here and render our model, they all are going to be loaded. Let me refresh my page. As soon as I click here, we are going to see our form here. That's because it's already loaded. But if you want to optimize your application, instead of importing them like that, you can use Next.js Dynamic. So let me comment this out. And I will say const teacher form. I'm going to be using dynamic. That comes from Next Dynamic. Just like that. And inside, I'm going to write my import. Let's copy this. And you can write here your configuration. Let's write here a loading indicator so you can see it better. I will just return h1 tag and loading. I can do exactly the same thing for the student. And right now, let me refresh the page. I'm gonna click here. As you can see, it was loading, and after that, we see here our form. Let me open my console and choose network. I'm gonna refresh my page. Let's clear here. When I click on this button, you are gonna see that it loads our teacher form. I will click, and as you can see, the teacher form TSX is here. Okay, this is how you can use lazy loading. For this application, it's not that important, but if you have some complex components, it's better to use it like that. And again, if you are using client component, for the server components, you don't have to do anything. So right now, I'm gonna create my other forms and add them here. Let me quickly copy and paste. I just copy and paste because we are not doing anything different. It's exactly the same thing again and again. And as I said, in the next lesson, we are gonna change them. So we don't have to waste time. They can stay like that. I'm just gonna import my other forms and paste them here, just like that. Okay. And in the next tutorial, we are also gonna choose different server actions for each table. But for now, we completed our design. We have great dashboards for each user. We have great list pages. We are able to call our mutation forms, just like delete, update, or create forms. We have the single user pages. And if we missed something, we are gonna complete in the next tutorial. Don't worry. And that's all. Thanks for watching. If you learned something new today, please like the video. You can support Lama Dev by joining the channel or by using the link in the description. Don't forget to follow Lama Dev's social media accounts. I hope I'll see you in the next tutorial. Goodbye.